It's time for Geocache Talk. Whether you are at work, in the car, or wherever you are, we hope you enjoy this show about the great sport of geocaching. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can be part of the adventure tonight in the chat room and participate with others as they watch the show. If you are listening later, please give it a like and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app so that you can get all of the weekly Geocache Talk goodness. If you would like to become a patron, click on the Become a Patron link on the front page of the Geocache Talk website or head over to patreon.com/Geocache Talk for more details. Patrons get the now famous blackout coins and other geocaching items during the year. Support levels start as low as the Bison Tube level, which is only $3 a month.
Big thanks to Derek of Baker Six Clan and our featured patrons, Cash the Line, The Caching Dead New York, Nikul, Udak, JB Opto, GeoVet 91, Nitty Gritsky, E-Ray Bowl, Hoffer 15, Bember, and our new patrons, Wards of Draw, Kazoo Otters, Homer CF, BA Wag 75, Roomba Cats, Stark AZ, Fishing Kitty, Wendland Bunch, and Jasperie. I like that one. All right. Well, we're going to jump right in. We got a lot to cover tonight. So we're going to jump right into show 251, Chasing the Thrill. So we welcome to the show, Dan Barbarisi. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here, Gary. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We've been talking for a while now by email. I think since I saw the article in Outside Magazine, I think I contacted you and you said, let's wait till the book comes out.
Yes.
And the book came out. So very exciting. We'll even talk a little bit about that, how really kind of worked out that it didn't come out early.
Oh, yeah.
So that you could get so you could redo the ending. But we are going to be giving away 2 books tonight at different times during the show. We have options too. So I suggest the hardback, but if you'd like the audio side of it, I bought the audio and listened to the book. Derek did as well. But I didn't know this until another podcast I watched you on where there's a map in the book that you did, right?
There is actually a map in the book. Yeah, I actually had that commissioned. I drew the basic idea myself, and then cool. An actual artist did the map. But so I won't say that the map is like worth buying the book for, but it's an additional element.
Still though, cool. Still, yeah. Okay, lot to cover. Charles with us tonight. Being there's the hashtag Chasing the Thrill. If you want to go ahead and put the hashtag in, you will be entered in the drawing, and we'll get to that in a little while. Yeah, Charles with us tonight. I felt Charles would be good to have on, being a person who works for the BLM, and we're going to talk about hiding things on different places in the world, and can you hide something on BLM land and so forth. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let's talk a little bit about Forrest Fenn. We have people who have different this is a different audience than some of the ones that interviews that Dan's been on. And I guess I picked a couple that were like the hardcore Fenn people. What'd you call them? Fenn tubers?
Yes, there is a whole Fenn tuber community, Fenn shows that appear on YouTube essentially. So makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we've got a different, so let's talk a little bit about Forrest. I won't go into a lot of it, but I have some information, and I guess maybe you could summarize a little bit about the man.
Yeah, sure. I mean, right. Yeah, a lot of people have heard vaguely of the Forrest Fenn treasure hunt, even if they're not, familiar with the details. But, short version was that in the 80s, a guy named Forrest Fenn, who's an ex-fighter pilot turned kind of Southwestern art dealer to the stars, was a very successful art dealer based out of Santa Fe. And in the late 80s, he came down with what was believed to be terminal cancer. And he decided that rather than kind of take that lying down, he was going to do something about it and do something with it. And so he decided to, he came up with this plan where he decided to essentially hide a treasure chest with a lot of his wealth in it. And he was going to go and actually hide it somewhere at a special spot, one that meant a lot to him. And he would lay down next to this treasure chest, take some pills, and die. He wasn't going to let the cancer beat him. He was going to take himself out of the game.
Right.
And then he would have his poem that he had written, and that was going to lead people eventually to his body and his treasure. So fortunately, I think for everyone involved, he did not die. He beat the cancer, but he didn't want to abandon his plan. He thought it was a good plan. He liked it. So over the next 20 plus years, he kind of worked towards it. He honed the poem that he intended to use. He actually bought a real treasure chest. He filled the chest. He kind of curated it, hooked things in, or put things in. He took things out, different things he liked, different things he didn't like. And then, around 2010, he finally actually went and hid the chest. And so then he published his memoir, The Thrill of the Chase. And in that was contained the poem. And that kind of set off this treasure hunt, which started off very small for a while, but then really blew up around 2013 and became kind of this big international phenomenon that that eventually ended up being. And, a lot of people went and looked for this thing. And, a lot of crazy things happened as a result of it. And so I got involved in it in 2017 and, decided I wanted to tell the story of it. And to do that, I actually became a treasure hunter. And so, with the idea that, you can really only understand something on that visceral level by doing it. And I wanted to kind of be a part of this thing and understand why people in it cared about it so much and, what the appeal was, what the dangers were, that kind of stuff. And just went in and tried to tell the story of it kind of from the inside and spent the last, 3 to 4 years basically doing that. And came out in the book, Chasing the Thrill, as you just noted, came out right around a month ago.
Yeah, exciting stuff that you were able to be part of it. And I guess let's also back up and talk about your background a little bit because it's interesting the perspective that you had because you've written a book before and you kind of took, if I understand correctly, kind of took a similar perspective on it, but yet sort of changed. So I guess let people know a little bit about how you came to this as far as your background and your employment and various things. Yeah,
sure. I mean, I was a, journalist, newspaper reporter for, almost 20 years. Started in the Boston Globe and Providence Journal way back. And I was doing news and politics type stuff. And then moved over to sports 2008, covered the Boston Red Sox for the Providence Journal. Then the Wall Street Journal called. They wanted me to cover the New York Yankees for them. So I went to New York, did that for about 5 years in sports business, stuff like that. And then at the end of 2015, I actually quit that job so that I could write a book about daily fantasy sports. So DraftKings and FanDuel, but right when they were blowing up. And so I did a very similar thing, as you noted, similar, very intentionally similar, where I tried to become one of the sharks within that, one of the guys who was winning all the big money at that time. And to do that, actually, I enlisted the help of one of the kind of greats of that, that world, this guy named Jay Rayner, who went by the nickname Beep, I'm a Jeep, and everyone called him Beep in that. Beep. And so he was Beep is the man. So Beep was my mentor in that world, and he actually took me to becoming the fantasy hockey world champion of 2016.
Yay!
It was a lot of fun. And so, big giant check, goofy belt, all that stuff. And so then in 2017, when the book had come out and everything, Beep he'd become obsessed with something new, and he wanted to tell me about it. And one day he said, have you ever heard of the treasure of Forrest Fenn? And I was like, what? I have no idea what you're talking about. Because I'd actually never heard of this thing. I had no idea what was going on for 7 years. I had no concept of it. Right. And once he told me about it, I was like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. I want to go be a treasure hunter and I want to go write a book about this thing. So we kind of started doing that. And so he became my treasure hunting partner in this. And again, with him there on board already, the structure was very similar to the last book. Us two buffoons running around in the middle of nowhere and seeking treasure and trying to tell the story of this larger enterprise. And so, yes. And also, I also work at The Athletic, which you may know is a big international sports website. And so since you're asking about me, been there since about 2018. So, and I will actually, as soon as this is over, I'll have to get back to work on editing baseball stories for the night. So.
Yes. We'll definitely, we'll keep you all night for that because you got work to do. But so let's talk a little bit about the actual treasure, since some people don't understand. And we'll show some pictures later on, but again, hashtag Chasing the Thrill if you'd like to win one of the books tonight. I was surprised, and maybe Tom in the middle of sounds like geocaching.
Well, there's a lot of commonalities between Finn's treasures, why it captured this audience's imagination so much. There's a lot that overlaps with geocaching. The whole, except for the actual payoff of the treasure, the rest of it is basically geocaching.
I would think that there's a lot of people who do both. That would only make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's outside of the value of the treasure. Geocaching is a treasure hunt, right? It's just the whole thing is the hunt.
Yep.
It's not what you're finding; it's the hunt. So
and funny, we talked before the show. Remember, Dan? We talked about our little stash hunt thing that Derek and Charles each found one. Charles found one up in a tree. It was in Arizona, wasn't it? Ironically,
it was ironically in Arizona.
So you probably don't even live now too far from that stash hunt, but very good. Dave.
Same concept, right?
Same concept.
Hidden all over the country, and random clues to get there, and vague clues, and
some of them
you can't hide anything where people won't eventually go find it.
Yeah, I agree.
I was surprised at the size. I don't know if you were you surprised when you first heard that it was basically a 10 by 10 by 4 box, or did you not? I was, when I think treasure chest, I'm thinking like pirate.
Right. And I think I had that impression too, that you kind of have that idea of, this big chest, like we're in Aladdin or whatever, with just stuff spilling out of it, bursting with valuables. Crazy. And no, this is not that, I mean, it is a treasure chest, but it's smaller, it's, as you said, 10 by 10 by 5. But, I mean, this is something that he had to go out there and actually hide himself.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was that, you didn't want somebody to just kind of like some random person who's not intending to find it just happening upon this thing. You don't want to be able to see it at 500 feet.
Yeah.
So, I think there were reasons to keep it that small, and I also think he saw the chest and, he thought it made a good treasure chest. I think that, I don't know if he was really, because I actually don't know this part. I don't know if he was seeking out a bigger or smaller chest or whatever intentionally, but he saw this one chest and decided it would make a perfect treasure chest. And then kind of everything went from there. Probably if that box that he saw was twice the size, it might have ended up being twice the size. At the same time, then it would have been difficult for a man of his age to carry it out there by himself.
Right.
So, a lot of this does have to do with the idea that he had to hide this thing and he had to find a way to do that without anyone else seeing. And, it made it portable for him. So, but I mean, I in my mind's eye, the treasure chest was bigger for sure. Yeah.
And they said 42 pounds. And we'll get into a little bit later on. Oh, Pizza Ninja says he was going to, and this, trust me, Dan's heard this story about 1 billion times in researching his book. I was hoping to go in search. How many
I knew where it was, but then, I was going to go pick it up, but
exactly. Oh my gosh. How many people, in one of your podcasts, you talk about how many people have, how many thousands of people have probably were contacted Forrest and said, "Oh, I know where it probably is." It's like
thousands upon thousands.
Oh
and
my
he
gosh.
said he just wouldn't respond to those.
Right.
Well, that's like everybody knows how to solve a mystery after it's solved.
Yeah.
Everybody says they have the answer after it's over, but they didn't have it before it was solved, but they sure had it afterwards.
Yeah, they all thought. Yeah, they all think they know. In fact, I think there's people that still. Well, a couple things, and we don't want to get into I don't want to go into the crazies too much.
Don't jump ahead yet.
I don't want to get ahead of myself here because we're going to talk a little bit about. I want to call them crazy because you did it as well, but that's different. You were crazy, but you weren't like that kind of crazy.
I don't know. I was kind of crazy. I don't know. I guess it's all in the eye of the beholder. So
yeah, but he. Obviously went out and hid, and like you said, people started searching. Did when you started, you and Beep started this process together? Did your friend have? Because he introduced you to it. Mm-hmm. Had he gone out yet? Had Beep gone out there yet? Okay.
No, he had a solution, a solve as I call it, that
right.
He thought was a good idea. It was not even close. And so I very quickly disabused him of that one. But then, we started coming up with new stuff, primarily him coming up with this stuff. I didn't do I was not a very good treasure hunter guy who came up with a lot of ideas. He came up with almost all our ideas.
Sure.
but our first search was actually together. It's the thing that begins the book actually. So in June of 2017 was the first time he or I went searching out in New Mexico.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. And something we want to kind of delve into a little bit, and this is probably a good time for it, is where, we know, and we're not going to get into all this. We know it's in Wyoming because the finder at least gave that information. And we know that people are just dying to hear more about where it was. But regardless of that, we kind of want to talk about, since we're cachers, we deal a lot with, where can we hide our caches? What's allowed? What's not allowed? Can we put them, on private property? You need to get permission, which many of us, I think all of us here have all done. I have caches on private property, but all with permission. Chamber of Commerce, I have a hide there, and a couple other places. But one of the things I had no information about, but I thought we got a guy here who works for the BLM. And this guy down here, right down there, Charles the man. So Charles did a little bit of extra checking. You probably knew most of this already, but he did some extra checking this week about hiding on BLM and abandoned property. So let's talk a little bit about, in theory, again, we're not really getting into the detail of it, but let's say in theory, Forrest wanted to hide it on BLM property. What would that entail, Charles?
He'd have to have clearance from the office that oversaw the property. Not knowing who the property owner and managers were for where his treasure is, or was placed. We're going to go hypothetically here. He'd have to walk in and get permission to hide it in the manner in which it was hidden, right? And so, in some of this, there's in the 36 CFR, which is the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 327.15. That is the section of the Code of Federal Regulation that covers abandonment and impoundment of personal property that is abandoned on federal managed public lands, right? So, so there are a couple of provisions in here in which it says that, you cannot go in and specifically leave something and not come back to it, right? And after a period of 24 hours, at that time, that then becomes abandoned property, right? And then there are a couple of different things that happen if somebody finds what is deemed abandoned property on public lands. They're allowed to pick it up and walk away with it. And you as the person who hid it really have no recourse because it was abandoned property on public lands.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, there's some other caveats to that. If a government agent or employee finds it, what then happens to the property? And that goes down a whole nother rabbit hole. But it is confiscated. It is then brought back to the office. It is turned into both law enforcement and the local property management officer. And then they have a recourse of action that gets taken. There's a grace period in which if you are the owner of said abandoned property, you can come in and claim it. Right. And then likely will be issued a citation for abandoning property on public lands by the law enforcement officer. If you don't come in and claim it, there's a 90-day, there's a 90 or 120-day waiting period, right? And then before the federal government can dispose of it. The federal government disposes of all property through a open-ended auction that we have through the federal agency website, right?
Okay.
So we have auctions that are online. Abandoned property, once it meets that time threshold, goes into that auction, and then it gets auctioned off to the highest bidder. All of the proceeds from said auction then go back into the general fund at the Treasury.
Right.
And so, but there are some things for whether or not, right? I see Jesse shaking his head. They have to go through a process to determine what fair market value is on it.
Oh my.
And then depending on the price of what fair market value is, there is, they can put a minimum bid, right? So they can put that where if it doesn't sell on the auction, like somebody's, $1.4 million sports car that got confiscated.
Oh, gotcha.
It can't sell for $200, right?
Okay.
So there's a process and some paperwork that's involved with it. So it's kind of thankful that a federal employee didn't find it if it was on federal land, because that's what would have happened with it. Would have gone back into the
First of all, never would have happened that way.
No.
Second of all, only the federal government can make finding gold treasure boring. That is horrible.
Scott says we could probably rule out.
Yeah.
He's not be on property and he didn't get permission. And then Tom says if he had involved the government, he would have died of old age before he got permission.
Yeah. So I'm going to assume, and Dan, I don't know if you can tell us this or not, but
I almost
did not go in and let anybody know that he was hiding this treasure ahead of time.
So first of all, I don't know where the specific type of land it actually ended up being found on.
Yeah.
I know Wyoming, but that's it. Yeah. I don't believe he contacted the government beforehand and told them he was going to go hide a treasure chest. I don't know, but I feel pretty good in saying he didn't.
No way he did that.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then, second of all, if some government employee would have found a treasure chest full of gold, they're not taking it back to the office. That joker is going home with it and quitting in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I'm dropping my retirement paperwork, whether I'm eligible for retirement or not.
I'm gonna let that go to auction. It's a pirate's chest of gold. I'm not taking that into the. Hey, boss, look what I found. I don't know anybody that honest. I've never met that person that honest. And they did. I'm taking their treasure. So that is silly. And there's no way he was going to tell him either. I assume there's no way he's going to go, "Hey guys, I'm hiding a treasure that would going to kill themselves trying to get to."
No way that happens.
Come on federal land. You don't mind if a couple people die on the way to this, do you? No, it's okay. That is so impossible. But it's good to know that they actually have a provision for people hiding treasure on BLM land. So
it's something to know.
Well, and this covers more than just BLM land, right? So this covers. The National Forest Service is held to the same rules and regulations.
Right.
Bureau of Indian Affairs gets into some muddy waters, so we try not to talk about them because then you have to get the tribe involved.
Right.
For wherever that's hidden. But anything that is federal public land, right? So Bureau of Reclamation land, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, all of them all abide by the same rules. So don't think that just because I mentioned I do work for the Bureau of Land Management. I did contact some land use people for, hey, what is the rules on this? And I contacted a couple of law enforcement guys and talked to them.
Sure.
I by no means am sitting up here as a representative of the federal government telling you this, right? I am in a geocaching t-shirt.
That's right.
Right. So this is not the stance of the federal government publicly on, or on paper.
I don't need to watch this podcast anyway. It's okay.
But that's good because what's interesting is, and this is something that we all, I guess, kind of thought about, is that, where he's going to hide it out there, a lot of that stuff comes into play, right, Dan? Because you're talking, New Mexico, you're talking New Mexico, Arizona, those areas, a lot of Native American.
Wyoming, Colorado, Montana were the 4 possible states.
Right. And so for those locations, he probably did do some double checking as far as,
Oh yeah, he did check the types of land. And I think, I think most people felt pretty confident that it wasn't on either private property or, Native American land,
Right.
I think everyone felt pretty good about those are probably too difficult to deal with. And he didn't want to go through that kind of stuff. So it would have been almost definitely some kind of public land. And I think a lot of the questions were, is it BLM? Is it Forest Service? Is it national parks? Those were a lot of the real questions around it. So,
yeah. And so, when we'll get into when the treasure's found here in a few minutes, but so you again you're treasure hunting, but yet at the same time you're wanting, you're writing a book, and I'm trying to remember again, this has been a few days since I finished it, but from the time you started, you and Beep were kind of getting out, kind of hunting around. At one point, did you actually, because you got to meet Forrest and talk to him, and again, there's a whole section of the book I really enjoyed where people have different perspectives on your writing a book kind of thing. I mean, that was interesting, and because some people are not really happy about you writing a book.
I wouldn't say people weren't happy about me writing a book. I don't think that really. I mean, but it's.
Or are you searching?
Well, neither really. It's just that when you're trying to do the, I was very clear to everybody, and like I should have like tattooed on my forehead, like I am an active searcher and also writing a book. It would like save me a lot of trouble having to explain it like 500 times.
Right.
But, that was actually really so. I was actively trying to do both, and it wasn't really people per se, but you have to try to come up with almost rules for yourself in that. Right. It's like, okay, how am I going to, make sure to kind of straddle that line correctly where I am, somewhat wearing journalist hat, but also somewhat wearing searcher hat, With the searchers, honestly, I thought that was like, it was great because, a lot of them that would like kind of break the ice with them because, they'd be like, oh, you're just another reporter here. And I'd be like, no, look, I'm actually trying to search this thing. I'm trying to kind of let the chest have a hold of me. And a lot of people, they seem to open right up at that. That seemed to like really, be advantageous in that situation. But yeah, like, so, with Forrest, for instance, I had to, try to make sure like, okay, I'm not going to ask him like, where is the treasure located kind of stuff. I'm not going to try to, when I talk to him, I'm not going to talk about that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk about the hunt and the larger stuff that's going on and the trends and the most recent things that happen. And what did you think about, this development and that thing? And when this went wrong, what did that make you, that kind of stuff. So, I very clearly made sure to never like pump him for information or even, try to go in that direction so that, he wasn't going to think that's what I was there to do, because again, the hunting for treasure part, as fun as that is, and it is cool to be a treasure hunter,
Sure.
At the same time, that was essentially, an academic part of this to try to understand the experience better and to be able to have that as a narrative device, So, I didn't think I was going to find the treasure. That wasn't right. That really wasn't, that's like a needle beyond needles in haystacks. So
what was it? I know you covered some of it in the book, but I mean, what was it looking back on it now? I mean, what was it like to go to this house and walk in and literally see what you got to see and kind of sit down with the man? I mean, I know you were trying to kind of wrap your head around, okay, I know a little bit about him, but what was it like to actually talk to Forrest?
Yeah, I mean, he was a very impressive guy. He really was, and he knew that too. He had almost a whole like spiel he would run reporters through, and he had a whole set of things he would do. Almost like kind of a practice routine to some extent. And he as you mentioned, I went to his house. Then he has this magnificent study/office, which is just festooned. Pardon me, with incredible, stuff from his career and, all these artifacts and all this incredible Native American stuff and cool stuff from his fighter pilot days. And, he's just a really interesting guy who's had his hand in a lot of interesting places in, course of his life. And so, it was very impressive to be able to kind of sit down and soak that all in, and he knows the effect that kind of stuff has on people. Sure. The guy was a very good salesman, and that's why his gallery was so successful. He was very good at selling things to people. He wasn't a huge expert on art, but he was really understood people and how to get into their good graces and motivate them and, get them to do what you wanted them to do. He was very good at that. So, one thing I was noting is, when I came to his house the first time, so I had wanted to interview him. And so, I talked to a lot of people close to him. And then eventually I finally reached out to him and I said, I'd like to do this thing. I would like to talk to you. Will you talk to me? And I didn't have any guarantee he was going to do that. And he got back not that long after saying that, he knew my work from the Wall Street Journal. So of course he would be willing to talk to me. And I feel very confident that he did not know my work from the Wall Street Journal. I was like sports writer. I was like doing sports business. Like there's no way he was reading that stuff enough where he would know my name and know who I was.
Right.
But that's the kind of stuff he would do to try to make people feel like, oh, I know you, we're special, we're connected. Yeah. And then like when I got to his house, he had like 3 copies or maybe I don't remember how many, but of the Wall Street Journal, like on his side table, there. And he's like, oh, it's a good newspaper. And I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. Cool. And I've heard from other reporters that he would do similar things with them.
Right.
And then he had this whole thing where he lets people take a little sip of this bottle of brandy that Jackie Onassis, Jackie Kennedy Onassis apparently had left at his house, 30 years ago or whatever. So, and he was like, oh, and if you're special enough, I'll let you get a sip. He would do a lot of these little things there, that, he was very well practiced and all that stuff. But like, what? Just because the show has been run 100 times doesn't mean it's not a good show. He was very captivating and very entertaining. And, he really could command a room, even at that age. He was very good at all this stuff. And so, it was very interesting for me to both try to, get, I wouldn't say close to him because that wasn't really the idea, but to get to know him well. And then also trying to kind of like capture him, for the book and try to explain him and have people understand who this guy was. Because he's not an average guy. He's a very interesting and different character, like, a lot of people have crazy ideas in the middle of the night and we think, oh, I should totally go do this. But almost all of us don't do them. You don't have this crazy thought at 3 a.m. where you're like, oh, I should bury a treasure chest and write a book and a poem and spend like 20 years doing it. Like, I have crazy ideas like that all the time, maybe, but like, I don't go do them. And this guy did, So it takes a very different kind of person to not just have the idea, but then legitimately follow through on what is a not easy to pull off plan on a lot of levels. So, really just trying to capture who he was and understand him and kind of see what made him tick for the most part and try to get some level of understanding of that was really the goal on a lot of levels with him.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an interesting, like you said, there's so much about him. I mean, shot down.
Yeah. Twice.
Was he shot down twice? Was it?
Yeah.
I knew he'd been shot down. I mean, there's that in itself. And we've got, Charles was Army. So, So he's, familiar with the military side of it a little bit for us. But to be shot, like you said, there's something about, and then to be so rich that he put, and we were trying to figure out, I was going to go back and look, but do you remember what they said the possible value of?
I think it's around $1 million. I think $1 million is a good number to use. It gets inflated a lot. There's a lot of people who have an incentive to inflate it or just, numbers get passed around.
Right.
I think it's around $1 million worth, but it's not crazy to say it's $1.5 million.
Okay.
There are some people who say $3 or $4 or $5 million. To me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But, I think that, there's been some pretty good estimations done that put the low end of it around 600,000 and the high end around 1.3 million. And that's not counting the idea that it's the Fenn treasure, which obviously potentially could give it additional value, but this is just the stuff in the box.
Right.
Yeah.
About $1 million is a fair
about $1 million
number to use.
More than I found in the woods this weekend. So
yeah, probably.
Either way, yeah.
I don't know, man. Look, you might have got some cool woods. I don't know.
We found, we're finding some cool things, but nothing like this.
Yeah.
This, and that's the thing I know you've mentioned before is like, why? I mean, he must have been. I mean, I don't know what Forrest Fenn's was. What his net worth was. Before he passed away, but obviously $1 million wasn't going to break the bank for him.
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But he probably got a lot more out of it than that $1 million. You know what I mean? Like not financially, but I mean, his opinion of the hunt, which obviously you were on the hunt, and your opinion of it would be quite different than his. Did you get him to share? Was he open enough to share his opinion of how it kind of went over the years?
I mean, that's a lot of what we talked about, in kind of how things had changed, as you mentioned, a number of people died on it. We talked a lot about those kind of things. I think, when the community was very small initially, I think he really enjoyed that when there was just a couple thousand people and it had a real almost familial sense to it.
Right.
And then, it really got big around 2013 and all of a sudden, tens of thousands of people are flooding into this thing. And obviously that's going to change the nature of it. And I think he both enjoyed that because I think, this was a guy who did not mind fame. This was a guy who did not, he didn't hate that the camera was on him. And so, I think he enjoyed a lot of the fame he got out of it. And, people being interested in him and his hunt at the same time, it also got a bit unwieldy as a result of it getting so big. And that really changed the tenor and the character of that. And I think that, that very much, there were conflicts there in that with him. In that, again, I think he did like some elements of it getting big, but then it kind of went beyond his control on some levels. That I think was tough for him.
Yeah. Well, especially when it kind of went, when it definitely went too far, when you got the guy, Chavez, I think. He gets arrested. I guess tell people real quickly about how this thing kind of went south.
Well, in that regard specifically, there were a number of people who unfortunately took this, a bit too far, and you're going to have, people who are drawn to this for whatever reason who are not necessarily have the best intentions. And one of those was this guy, Paco Chavez, who, ended up thinking that Fenn's granddaughter was the treasure and that, he may need to kill her and just, really kind of, obviously messed up stuff. He, went to Fenn's house all the time and, threatened them. And, he eventually ended up going to jail and then going back to jail for trying to get out and get back to the family. And, that wasn't the only incident of that type. There were other people who, I think, they went to his house. There's a lot of stuff. There were people who broke in. There was a lot of pressure put on him, through this. I don't think he ever saw any of that coming when he did this. I don't think he didn't envision it that many steps down the road. Because that's the thing. You do something like this and there are a billion unintended consequences. And, that's one of the things I really wanted to explore in the book, that you can't really envision this is going to go A to B to C. It doesn't work that way in something like this.
Right.
So, there's definitely people who took it too far and people who, did the wrong things in this and all that. And, I think that was also very hard for him to reconcile because he thought the whole thing, was a greater good in general. And he thought there were positives that came out of it, but obviously there were also negatives. Yeah.
Well, and his family how much pressure do you think his family, because it sounded like they kind of really got with him and said, you need to stop this. I mean, I don't
know specifically what happened there, and that can get kind of controversial, frankly.
Yeah.
But, I think that certainly, the family had a lot of, they didn't sign up for this in so many ways.
Sure.
They didn't expect this was going to change and define their lives in so many ways. And so you can certainly understand, if they could think, what's going on here? Is this ever going to end? Are we going to be, doing this for the rest of our natural lives and our children's and our grandchildren's and all that? So you can certainly
that's true.
Understand why people in that situation might want to ask those kind of questions and wonder, is this going to be with us for generations now? Who knows? So
because there was no way to know at that point how long. But all right, well, let's give away one of the books real quick, and then we'll get back to some more questions. So, Derek, if you'll bring up the Wheel of Fortune, as it were. Everybody get in your hashtag chasing the thrill. There it is. So you better get it in quick because he's about to push the button. So for the first book, we're going to give away 2 tonight. Hashtag chasing the thrill on Amazon and different places. So it's in the show notes too, by the way, in case you don't win. We will, you can know where to purchase the book.
There's a very good chance you'll need it for an upcoming book club. Just throwing that out there.
Just throw it out there. Ooh, see?
Probably.
Ryan, pick me. Yeah. You should do like we did the last. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's spinning. It's spinning now. There we go. There goes all the people. That's
it needs like a spinning noise. It's silent.
It does. Oh, if you won recently too, you can't win again. Oh, he didn't win recently. The happy hodag. All right.
There you go.
All right. Okay. So I'm making a note. So there's a couple different ways or different versions. Hardback, the paperback is now out, and their audio. So
paperback is actually not out. But they're the Kindle version. You can do the audio version, or you can do the hardcover. Paperback doesn't come out until next year.
Okay.
Oh, but Amazon shows that it's ready. Maybe it's not.
Amazon. Don't believe everything you see on Amazon.
Oh,
man.
that's true. Yeah, okay.
If it's on the internet, it's got to be true.
Yeah, if it's on the internet.
So here's what's funny is, Dan, you don't realize this, obviously, but our audience realizes this. The way you describe that growing has a lot in common with geocaching.
No, really.
So geocaching doesn't have $1 million prize at the end, but it started with one dude hiding a bucket in the woods, and he was just interested if anybody would care to go find it.
Right.
And now, over 20 years later, there's 5 million people out there playing this game across the world. And out of that, most of those are good people. But there's a minuscule, small number, and you have 5 million that do some dumb things every once in a while and get arrested or fall and get hurt or stuck
die
in the woods or whatever else. And, the guy and the people that started the company that started off, it started as just one in the woods, literally a bucket. They had no idea that 5 million people would be playing that over 2 decades later and doing stuff on every continent and everything else. And it kind of is funny how that correlation there, right? Because when he hit it, he probably thought people would go, find it, and he make it. He's not scared of the spotlight, obviously, from his demeanor. But I wonder if he knew it was going to get as big as it did.
Oh, I definitely don't think he had any concept of that. I think he thought there'd be a few thousand people looking for it.
Yeah.
And he might honestly be his friends or something like that. Or kind of friends of friends, that kind of thing. And then it just get crazy. But yeah, I thought about geocaching. In relation to this, there's a very brief part about it in the book.
I appreciate you mentioning it.
Just because I think there's obviously a lot of similarities in the communities there, and just in the practice of it. And one thing that when I first got into the treasure hunt, I thought, oh, everyone's looking at this to try to get the $1 million, and I don't, I have come out of it thinking that was not the case. It was truly about, for most people, obviously, and there are going to be exceptions. The money was validating, but it wasn't the point. The point was, the chase and the hunt and solving it and being the one who could figure it out. And, I think that has so much to do with geocaching. I think, there are huge similarities there, obviously. Yes, the money here was bigger in the end, but I don't think that was ultimately the defining factor in it,
Yeah. And as geocaching, we have events all the time. Mega events, they're events all the time, sometimes mega events, which brings me to something that I guess is still going on, maybe even another one this year, which I don't know, maybe I'll ask you why you think there's going to be another Finbury, but they've had Finburys now for 4 or 5 years,
6-ish years, I think.
Okay. And you got to go to one.
You did.
And what was it like? Because you mentioned in the book about how Forrest, like you said, he's not going to shy away from the spotlight, but yet was he not really interested in a Finbury, or was he really interested in? And then what did you think of what did you think of the Finbury?
Yeah, Finbury is kind of a fascinating thing, because so much of this treasure hunt happens online, and so most of these people are not able to see each other most of the time. You have usernames on the various blogs and forums and stuff like that, but unless they knew each other beforehand, there wasn't a ton of face-to-face contact here. Right. And then Finbury comes along 2015-ish. I'm not sure exactly when the first one was, but I can find that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's 14. And it starts getting people together, and they have this shared pursuit, and they care about this thing, and they want to see like-minded people who also feel the same about it and are that into it, and who don't look at you funny when you say, I'm looking for a treasure, So it was, I think, very cool for the community to get to have these things and get to have a chance to get together like that. And then, finally in the 2016 Finbury, so it must have been in 14 at least was the first one, if not before that. Then in the 2016 Finbury, Fenn actually showed up.
Yeah.
And so that, made it a big thing for the 2017 one, which was the one I went to, because it was like, oh, Forrest might come back, and that one was the biggest one really at any point. There was, 150-ish plus people at that. And so that, for this was a big thing.
Yeah.
It was, it was very cool to get to see everybody kind of just interacting and getting, putting names to faces. And, getting to chit chat. And then obviously, when Fenn shows up, it's a chance to talk to God.
Right.
It's a chance to, this guy created this thing and you get to get your couple minutes with him. And that was, a big thing, I think. And I think, almost everybody there, thought they came away with some, big nugget of wisdom from Fenn. I assure you, he did not actually give most people there any great clues or anything. But, I think a lot of people felt like they did come away with things. But, that some of that's on Fenn too, because he really liked to kind of like stoke people's hope, He's very into doing that. And so, I can't say I blame everyone for coming away and thinking, that might have been something that he was telling me. So, but yeah, no, I mean, Fenbury was very interesting. They had there was the shrine to Fenn, which was, kind of tongue in cheek, but also kind of real. The golden Fenn, which is this Captain America action figure painted gold with an F on the chest.
Oh, gosh.
And, just like a whole homage to him in various parts of his life. And, it's a very interesting thing to kind of be around that, where there's this guy and there's, very much like this, thing has sprung up around him and about him. And it's all about his life. If you go through, people are really you have to be obsessed with him and understand who he was if you're going to figure out where his special spot was and why this thing mattered to him. So, very interesting to have this guy be so focal to it. It's not just a treasure chest; it's really about a man too. So, kind of a crazy phenomenon in that way that I think I didn't fully realize, certainly at the beginning, and really honestly, in some ways, until right around the end. So.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting too that, like you said, that I mean, they've. We do coins, and they did a coin for to pay some of the costs and everything. But there's some relation of things that I'm
there's a lot of parallels with
catching. Yeah,
let it out.
There was and I want to get to here in a second, showing everything and you're being able to see the treasure and all that. We'll do that here in a minute. But it reminds me, and tell me, guys, if you think this reminds you at all of the shelter. And the shelter, Dan, was a cache hide that was very famous for when you can't find a geocache, you're supposed to mark it as a DNF, did not find. Okay. And this thing had hundreds, if not really, if people were honest, probably thousands and thousands of people who couldn't find it. It was hidden in a shelter, like we called it the shelter, but it was a
picnic gazebo,
like a park gazebo.
Okay.
Yeah. And the big thing about it was that there was only a handful of people, in fact, probably a couple even in the chat room tonight, of the 7 or whatever that ended up finding it. Eventually the owner of it, after it was found a few times, said, I'm gonna get rid of it, because the
secret was out. I mean,
the secret was out. But there was a real interesting dynamic in that people were mad and upset that like, how dare he hide something that nobody can find? And it was just this weird.
Well, it was, but this is the opposite. So think of the opposite of Fenn's treasure, right? Everybody knew exactly where it was.
Yeah,
but it was hidden in plain sight, and they just could not get there and figure it out. And people would sleep overnight. Groups would go to this shelter and look for it all day and all night. They would have events there yearly to try to find it.
So people knew like where this gazebo
they knew exact GPS coordinates where it was, but it's hidden on the shelter in a way that
really small.
It appeared to be part of the shelter.
Yeah,
but it was camouflaged so well that hundreds and hundreds of people spent.
It was smaller hours. It was smaller than this, but this is a blood vial. These tend to be. There's the logbook is in there, but. It was smaller than this, but the idea was if you can hide it perfectly, in the right spot, you could.
Yeah, and the way it was hidden, people looked and touched it several times and never knew what it was, and it's kind of the same process. The fervor of wanting to find it grew with every time another group couldn't find it.
Sure.
So it just more and more people, and I don't even know how many years it was out, but there was people like watching online. Like you can like kind of watch the profile page of this one, little geocache, and people all over the world were watching it to see if anybody got any clues or anybody. So it's kind of like a condensed group. But the opposite, everybody knew exactly where it was, but nobody could figure it out.
Yeah. Super interesting.
Crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. Fuzzy B. Yeah. He put out Vince himself passed
Yeah,
out
there was coins and all kinds.
DNF.
There was a coin about I did not find it.
heads.
They couldn't find it. They couldn't sell a coin for I did find it because not enough people would find it. But there was a lot of people that bought the coin that didn't find it, right? So
yeah, it made me think about that. So
yeah, the excitement just grew and grew and built, and that wasn't even that many years, and it was for $0. So that's pretty interesting. It was not for $1 million. It was
Not
for
for
$0.
not for money.
That's a cool one. I like that.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Okay, so the treasure ends up being found, and you for a while the person didn't come forward, and I guess a lot of people who are really hardcore into it, they remember the moment that they found out. It's not like, I hate to use the JFK assassination moment, but whatever big moment, whenever the Berlin Wall fell or whatever it happens to be, people remember where they were. And I know that's something that if you're a hardcore Fenn treasure searcher, I guess if you ask them to this day, probably, right, Dan, they'll tell you exactly where they were when they found out.
Absolutely. I remember where I was when I found out, for sure. So, yeah. And I think the one I used in the book was the Challenger explosion, because I actually remember being exposed to that. But I think we were actually watching it live. That was fun.
Mm-hmm. I remember
that. Anyway, I mean, so, in June, actually almost a year ago, like last week, basically, on June 6th, 2020, Fenn announced that the treasure had been found. And, obviously that changed everything. It was crazy town after that. And so initially, he did not provide a lot of information, which ticked a lot of people off.
Drove people crazy.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely drove people crazy. Right. And, with reason. Initially it was like, okay, great, the treasure's been found. And people were like, oh, that's too bad. I wish I found it. But okay, that's cool. We'll learn a lot of stuff now about what happened with it. Then, basically no information comes out.
Yeah.
And Fenn kind of shut down a little bit and stopped, giving interviews about it and that kind of stuff. And so it turns out that, about a week after, he publishes some photos that show, him with the treasure. And so that at least gives people a little bit of, okay, well, there's the treasure. We know that, but he didn't tell who found the treasure or where it was found at all. And, a lot of people were very unhappy about that. And, it led to a lot of conspiracy theorism and, why isn't he telling us more? What's going on here? What really happened? That kind of stuff. In July, I believe late July, they released that it was found in Wyoming, but not where in Wyoming.
Right.
And that actually did not give people a lot of closure. Still a lot of people were like, well, it's not in Wyoming because of this. And, I still think it was in New Mexico. All right, well, fine.
It's still out there.
All right. But anyway, so then, I think, it kind of settled into a certain pattern of, what will we know? When will we ever know anything more? What's going to happen here? And then in early September of last year, Forrest Fenn died. And he was 90 years old. He had just passed his 90th birthday not long before. And, that ended up changing everything because obviously Forrest Fenn is no longer on the scene. And I think I certainly thought like, wow, we're never going to know anything now. And then a couple weeks later, a post surfaced on the website Medium, which is, publishing platform, and you can post there anonymously, which is important here. And it was by somebody who identified himself as the finder. And he had some pictures of the chest and some pictures that, somebody who would have had they had access to Fenn in the room where the treasure was found, or not found, but where the treasure was returned to Fenn. Yeah. And so, he basically lays out there, look, I was the guy who found the chest. I miss Forrest Fenn. He said, I felt very close to him. He was my friend. And, I'm sad he's gone. And it was kind of like an ode to Fenn, but also this interesting kind of explanation of who he was to some extent and about the process of finding the chest and what it was like for him. And so, a lot of people were like, this is BS. Don't trust this. What do we know of this guy? Is this some person putting some stuff up? But I very quickly thought it was legitimate. I, just reading things in there about his interactions with Fenn, they jibed with things that I had experienced with Fenn. And this person clearly had done real hunting and really understood, I think, the process of it. I mean, it rang true to me. And I was like, all right, I got to get, and also let's not forget, this guy had pictures, that you really have if, this was like nobody, so anyway, so I went and I basically was like, I got to figure out a way to get in touch with this guy. I think this is the guy. But you can't I'm not just going to post, you can't contact the author of a medium. It doesn't let you do that. And
I like the way you did it, though.
it was, and you
I
can't
love
just
the way
put
you
your
did
like email in the comments or be like contact me, because then any jerk off can contact me.
Yeah.
So that's not going to do any good. So
That's not going to work.
It doesn't do anything for you to do that. So, but I figured out a way to contact him directly, which is that you can actually flag a typo in a story, and that gives you like a tiny little bit of space where you can get in touch with the author of the post, basically saying like, you have typo here.
I love that.
Or this thing is misspelled or whatever. But I use it to like put in my email and be like, writing book, contact me. Yeah, Barbarisi did it. So, and not long after, I actually got an email from, the person who wrote it and said, I got your thing, I flagged it. All right, maybe we can talk. And so then, so we started a, kind of months-long dialogue there with me trying to get him to talk to me and trust me without knowing who he was. And eventually, and then that's going to bring you on the scene here, Gary, because that eventually culminated in my getting to write the article in Outside Magazine in early December that revealed who he was to the world. And then it was Jack Stoof, who was this guy, 32-year-old, raised in Michigan, medical student at the time, who had found the treasure. And so, so that's where I entered the story in that way, I guess.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we, like I said, when I heard that, because I have been interested. I know some of our fans and people who are watching, listening, because we have a lot of audio listeners as well, know that they probably were, at least I had a pretty good interest in it. I watched the Expedition Unknown that was done, by Josh Gates. And so I had a fascination with it as well. Not as far as you did, but I had at least some information about it. But let's show, Derek's going to bring up the picture of Jack with Forrest.
Yes.
And we'll talk about, there we go.
So that's pretty legit right there. It's hard to deny it after that, right? There's a stack of treasure, and Forrest is right there.
Yep.
And look at the grin. Look at the grin on Forrest's face. Yeah. Right?
I mean,
so whatever the conversation, whatever the conversation was there, he looks very pleased and happy with the outcome of this.
Oh, he has to be,
I think
right?
Jack said, he told me certainly a number of times that, he thought, Fenn had a real thrill out of getting to go through the chest again after all these years, which I'm not sure if he ever thought he would do, Yeah. So, and then to also get to know somebody and talk to somebody who had, been able to solve his riddle, was able to solve the puzzle was a big thing. I think he really enjoyed getting to have that experience before, he was gone. So,
leave that up for a minute, Derek, because I want to talk a little bit about, this is insane. I know you would agree. I think I'll get your opinion on this, but he finds the treasure. Jack finds it.
Mm-hmm.
He puts it back and goes home. Not home, but he leaves. He leaves it and walks away to check and make sure that he can go get it again. How weird is that? I would not have left anything in the ground of that magnitude. And he went back and contacted Forrest, correct? And said,
yes,
I found the treasure. Is it okay for me to grab it? Right?
Yeah. So he, as is in the book, he located the treasure, and then, he left and went back so that he could, contact Fenn and get essentially his permission to go remove it. I think he was very concerned about the legalities around it.
Right.
And he wanted to make sure he had kind of done things the right way. And, look, this is not, I don't want to speak for him in the sense, but I believe, look, I probably personally would have grabbed it and run away, but, I believe he thought he'd been looking out in this area for so long that he wasn't really concerned about somebody else just stumbling upon this thing that he had been searching this same area for like an incredibly long time.
Right.
That somebody else was just going to magically then happen upon it, in a short period of time. So
can you imagine?
I totally understand, like, to the brain, it sounds like, why would someone do that? But then we have to put ourselves in his shoes.
Right.
So,
He never told you exactly where the treasure was, right?
No. And that was kind of one of the essentially, arrangements of, my talking to him, that I wasn't going to try to use this. I didn't want to know the information because I didn't want to, I knew he didn't want anyone to know it. And then, I wanted him to talk to me. And so I didn't want him to be concerned about that, first of all. And then, I didn't also want him thinking that I was going to try to use the knowledge I gained from him to kind of reverse engineer that. And then, put that out there. And then ultimately, it's actually been very good that I did decide that early, because now that, since so many people do want to know where their treasure is, and they would use me as a proxy for him then, and I would then be under siege by the same people who are besieging him, looking to learn the information. So I am very happy I did not end up finding out anything about where it is.
Did he walk you through his thought process at all without being
we
too
did talk a
specific?
lot about that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating obviously for the people that are here, is that whole thought process and both sides of it, really, right? Because another one of the things in geocaching that we do is, we hide stuff, not with $1 million in it again, of course, but
we hide stuff.
Some of the things we do are, when we hide one like that, there's pretty intricate puzzles out there that take years for people to solve. And I've seen that same look on, puzzle hiders' faces when somebody finally solves their puzzle that it's been out there for 5 years. And again, zero value on ours, right? But it's just that first person to get out there and find it. I think they're usually as happy as the finder when that happens. They've been waiting years for this mystery to be solved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Somebody understood my thing enough to solve it. They got what I was doing, and they puzzled it out with me. I think that's absolutely the case here.
And I know one of the things I've heard people ask before when somebody finally solves their puzzle is they want to know kind of how they got there. Like, what was your thought process to finally solve this puzzle that nobody else has solved for 5 years? And there's puzzles that are out there longer than that even.
Yeah, for sure. I think they had a good time talking about all that stuff.
That's great.
It's always interesting too. People that do figure those out, they're kind of sometimes coy. They don't want to give you. Charles is on a show called Puzzle Talk. We talk about, solving puzzles for geocaching, and there are plenty of times where, even, people will say, well, how'd you get to that solution? It's like, I may not want to give you all that information. It's like, I spent a lot of time figuring it out, so I can understand Jack's calculated responses to people, and like you said before in interviews and in the book, that he is a very calculated person, right? I mean, you felt like that he really knows what he wants to give out and what he doesn't want to give out.
Yeah, I think that is very fair to say about him. Yes.
Yeah. So let's show also. So tell people real quick about how you were able to see the treasure, and we're going to show
the ending here. Okay.
Yeah. So you got to actually see it. How did it come about that you got permission? I guess.
Yeah. So yes, I got to see the treasure, which was very cool. Essentially, there's a lot of backstory to how that happened, essentially, in the book. But one day Jack asked, if I wanted to come see the treasure.
Yeah, that's
which,
crazy.
Was pretty awesome to get to see, and we started talking about it, and I was able to fly out to Santa Fe, and I went on a little single engine plane that my mom's husband had, and it was a crazy flight from all the way, from New York, basically, all the way out there. And so I was able to kind of go into the lawyer's office where Jack's lawyer, where the chest was being kept, and go in there and literally carry hold the thing and go through it and take it apart and go through the treasure. So, which was a kind of incredible moment for me, because I'd spent to that point 3+ years talking about this thing, thinking about this thing. It's in your mind, and then you actually finally get to see this like figment of your imagination made real. And you get to actually go through it. And it was a very, very cool moment to get to take that, chest and pull all the different gold nuggets and coins out and, all the various treasures and just kind of lay it all out there on the table and, be able to be one of the very, very, very few people who was able to do that. So that was very, very cool for me.
Do you know at this point if the chest has been, did Jack go ahead and get it and take it home, and nobody knows where it is now, right?
We don't know.
That's
not really, I mean, it's not, that's his business.
I think
if I knew that, I wouldn't tell anybody.
I wouldn't tell anybody either.
I wouldn't even want to know where $1 million was hidden. There's too many people that would reach out to you.
That's true.
There's some crazy people out there. So
what's crazy, what's great about it is the fact that you may be one of the few people ever that gets to see it. That's one of the things that, unless he puts it on display or something. who knows what happens after that? But
yeah, certainly probably one of the few who actually got to go through it.
Yes, exactly. To actually hold it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a great point in the book. And so we're going to show the picture of you with there you are.
Yep, there I am.
Wow.
And what, without giving away everything that's in the book, but what
You just did.
I know I did. I gave away everything in the book. Everybody says that. We have covered a lot, but there's a lot that we haven't covered.
No,
so
no, obviously not.
Definitely get the book, but for sure. And you in the audio, I love the audio because you narrated the audio, so I like.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was actually a lot of work, man. I didn't know that was like a full week. I had to take off from my day job and like sit in my closet, literally.
Yeah,
got turned into a recording studio and just like talk to a microphone for like 8 hours a day. That is like a no joke thing to do. I went through like 7 or 8 cups of tea a day. So but it was very cool actually to get to do it. I was happy I did it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. Really was wonderful because this wasn't going to be in the book initially, right? I mean, now we think about it.
No,
because
I couldn't count on somebody finding the treasure.
Yeah, that's the thing I think for people to realize is that you were gonna. This book was coming out.
Yeah,
one where this is, and the book was set to come out. A, Forrest was still with us, and B, nobody had found it, and you were going to just finish the book and be done.
Yeah, it had kind of an open-ended ending because what else are you going to do? Then move on to the next. It's funny because when I heard the treasure had been found, I think I had basically turned in like a rough final draft to my editor like about a week before.
Yeah,
and obviously the ending was not the same as it ultimately ended up being.
Right.
And so my first thought was like, oh no, what a disaster. Like I just like submitted thing. Now I'm going to have to like rewrite half the book. And like, what the hell am I going to do? And how am I going to get all this stuff done? And what is even going to happen? Is this going to happen on any timetable that I can like pull this off on, but obviously it ended up being like a tremendous boon for me, but I didn't see it that way initially. I was like, I'm completely screwed. So, it's great how it turned out, and that I was able to get in touch with Jack and then, all that stuff happened, but I didn't expect any of that to happen, Right. So, yes, ultimately it was like an amazingly good thing for me. And my original ending sucked. So like, whatever, but it ended up being very, 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 very good for me. But it was, like kind of terrifying in the moment.
Yeah. And just like you said, that just, the timing was, I mean, I know you said that you had to kind of rush out there and like, wait a minute, hold the presses as it were.
Yeah, kind of, and publishing houses don't like that, when a book is supposed to come out, less than a year later that, 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, even before it's supposed to come out, you're still making changes and still writing like the ending, 5 months. They don't like that. Believe me, they don't like that. I know that seems like a lot of time, but in book world, it's not. In publishing world, it's not. They want to have stuff on a book like this, like sealed up, like almost a year around ahead of time. And I'm, I'm December and January, still writing first drafts of stuff. So they were very good to trust me to get it done and to get it done, in timely fashion and all that. So I appreciate that from them.
Yep. Well, we're kind of coming to the close with Daniel. We're gonna go a little after, but he's got to get back to work. But
before we give away another book, still right? We don't want to forget that.
We're gonna give away a book, but we'll probably do that after. We'll let Daniel get back to work. He's got work to do. But before we do that, to wrap up tonight, if anybody has any final question, put them in the chat room, and we're gonna start the process of wrapping up for the night. So
I have a question while the chat room's putting those in there.
Yeah,
because we kind of glossed over the fact that you actually got to sit at a treasure chest filled with gold and play with it. I don't know anybody ever in my life that has actually got to play with a gold-filled treasure chest, like in real life. That's like stuff you see in the movies. That's fascinating.
It was cool as hell. It really was. And I think, I wrote about this in the book, but like, the most fun part was taking all the stuff out, because when you're doing that, you still don't know what's in it in some ways. I knew what most of the stuff that was in it was going to be, but, you're just pulling stuff out. And until you get to the bottom, it's almost like anything could be in it, Right. It's just bounded by your imagination. And I remember feeling like, that moment of disappointment when I got to the bottom of having actually taken out of the treasure chest, everything out, and was like, oh,
all those
that was so
different
cool.
types of treasure in there. It's so much more exciting than if it was just like stacks of cash, right? I mean, it's
no, really, the
amazing
fact that it was
treasure.
like all these varied things made it so much cooler. It was amazing just to get to like there's the most impressive item in there, I would say, is this golden dragon bracelet that like really looks. Oh, that's funny. Somebody just asked me.
Yes, we asked that. Yeah.
And so there's the golden dragon bracelet, which is studded with emeralds and rubies and diamonds and stuff. It was just amazing. I don't know if we can move the bar. It's in one of the baggies there. You can't really see it, but
right. Because some of
it's such an amazing piece there. It's just really like a lot of it, gold coins. Gold coins are cool, but they're just gold coins, But and some of the nuggets were impressive.
Yeah,
and, some of the old really ancient stuff he'd put in there was really cool. But the dragon bracelet definitely took the cake. But like getting to go through a treasure chest, it was like
that's amazing.
Like, this is amazing. I'm like pulling stuff out of a treasure chest, and I gotta like put it all back in, and it's like it's very much kid in a candy store, all that stuff, and just this particular treasure had held such a prominence in my mind for so long that it's kind of amazing to suddenly see it come real for you,
Right.
And somebody asked, what's the best place to buy the book in terms of
yeah,
it's all the same to me, man. Like whatever. You can buy it anywhere you want to get it, whatever, really. I mean, I guess if you technically buy it from the Penguin Random House like website, then probably cutting out the middleman. I don't know, but you can buy it anywhere you want. Buy local bookstores. Local bookstores are a good thing.
Yeah,
so
and that's where we kind of miss out. I know you mentioned before about wanting to maybe do a book signings, but right now we can't. But
it's too bad.
Maybe someday. I'll be in New Mexico in a couple of weeks, so come on out. We'll do a book signing, and I'll clear out I'll clear out all the people that are not vaccinated, and we'll just get it done. So anyway.
Right.
So, Dan, I know you got to get back to work, but I have one last question. I'm fascinated with, and it's more of your thought process. So you chased this for a while, both book and treasure hunter, right? Mm-hmm. So you obviously had some opinion in your mind, or something conjured in your mind of what the treasure was going to be.
Yeah.
How close was that to reality, or how far off? Or you had something in your mind, right?
Yeah, honestly, it was pretty close in terms of like what it felt like to look like.
Was it actually going to be a box of gold, or what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty close, honestly, to like what I thought it was going to be. You don't have like, there are some people in this chase who have like, well, there's this exact thing and it's this big, and it's just I didn't have that level of like fluency with every single item in it. But, most of the things I was like, oh, and there's that, and there's that, oh, and there's that, it was like, okay, you had that level of, it all mostly looked like I kind of thought it would,
Sure.
I think, some items, were a little bigger or smaller or whatever. But, for the most part, and it's funny, like the gold coins, I think I would have actually thought there would have been more of them because there's like 200 something in there. And, I think in my mind, and maybe this is the kind of Aladdin problem, it's just like coins as far as the eye can see, but that's not really how it works in the end. I ended up like stacking them all up into stacks and everything. But it's not, there's a lot of them. You can see there's a lot of them, but ultimately it's like not as many as you might think that is.
Right.
So, and the whole thing, it is funny. It felt smaller than I probably expected, even though knowing the size of it, fully understanding that, even when you're doing it, you're like, oh, okay, it's you're taking stuff out and it's a treasure chest, but your mind is still tricking you into thinking it's going to be bigger, it's going to be vaster and more, and there is an element of that to it. So for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, Daniel,
thank you.
Thank you so much for being on tonight. I know we've the timing I think was pretty good. Like you said, we talked before when the magazine article came out, and you said let's hold off, let's wait for the book, and I thought that was fabulous. And thank you so much again, and we will keep in touch, and sure. Go out and find a geocache. That's a lot easier to find.
Yeah, no, guys, thanks for teaching me a little bit more about geocaching. I appreciate that. And Charles, thank you for your excellent BLM, kind of rules speech there. That was awesome. And Jesse, thank you for the very good questions.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, thanks, Thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Gary, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Pleasure to be here with you guys.
You betcha, buddy. Thanks.
All
right.
That's just I want to hold gold treasure in my hand at some point.
I know, isn't that cool?
Like, you know, that's not just gold. Not that I've ever held a gold bar or anything in my hands, but a box of gold treasure. That's what we feel like geocaching is like every time, except for we know we're not getting $1 million, right? We want to find a little piece of paper.
Right.
I mean, and that's cool, you know, that his favorite piece was that gold dragon bracelet. Be like, I found a dragon in a cache.
There you go. I mean, it's basically the same
that
thing.
works.
You know, it's close, right? But you know, just the cool stuff that was in that. I'm with you, Jesse. Just going through that, man, I'd be like a kid in a candy store.
Oh gosh.
You know, I mean, do you remember how excited you were to get the prize out of like the Captain Crunch box or a box of Cracker Jacks when you were a kid? I mean, it's like that. And then
I was a kid.
Tenfold.
Yeah.
I'm so excited now. What are you talking about? Hey, look, when I find a geocoin in an ammo can, I whoop whoop.
You're like, woo, yeah.
I get excited now. And actually, it was a real live geocoin in the wild. Look at that.
That's right.
And I don't even get to keep that.
Yeah, it was 42 pounds, Direwolf, just to let you know, 42 pounds. Yeah, Kashernick's correct. Thank you, Kashernick. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, people are giving me a hard time about spilling too many beans out of the book, but there's a lot more of the book we never got to. And,
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but it's
you'll love it. It is really good. But yeah, I wanted to respect his time. I knew we couldn't pull him for an hour and a half. He's got writing, but I figured let's get all the info in, and then you and I, you know, the three of us could talk for a little bit, and then we'll give away the last. Come on
now, I wish I'd have gone for that treasure hunt, and if one of those ever comes up again, I'm not hesitating. I'm going.
Yeah.
I just, even not to find it, to get out there and be able to hunt like that, just the thrill.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine the thrill of that, right? Like, I mean, we're all geocachers. We've all been, well, obviously, for thousands of times in a row, we've been excited to go find a cache, but nothing to that level. Nothing where you think it's life-changing money at the other end, you know, or you're the only person that's ever going to find it. Now, finding it and walking away, that's kind of crazy, but, you know.
Yeah, and there's
I understand why he did it. You don't come upon $1 million normally and go, let me take this and run away with it. So, you know, that's got to feel weird. I mean, everybody's like, oh, I would have grabbed it. Well, you might have, but you haven't found $1 million, so you don't know.
That's like coming across the DB Cooper money in the wild now and be like, I'm just gonna pick it up and walk with it. Be like,
that's right. Yeah, there's some crazy stories in there, but yeah, people are like, well, why didn't he tell her where it is? It's like, the thing you got to remember is when you get to that kind of level of $1 million of loot in a chest, you are at prime, like the top prime crazies are coming out.
Oh yeah, people go after you for way less than that.
You think there's some crazies out there
broke into Finn's house.
Yeah, they broke in.
I wouldn't have ever come public with it. I wouldn't have told anybody I had it.
They were going to kill his daughter because they thought that was the treasure and they thought that was the way to get it or something. I mean, prime nuts, prime crazies come out when you talk about that kind of money. So you can't
imagine. Was a theory that Forrest was DB Cooper. I think it was very short-lived.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good.
That's awesome.
Well, all right. So if we ever figure out where this thing was in the end, could you imagine how awesome it would be to have a chasing the thrill of the chase type of memorial cache there? You paint the ammo can to look like
that one, right?
Yeah, and then you fill it full of the little fake pirate gold coins.
Right.
Exactly. You know how cool that would be?
That would be very cool.
That would be great.
We'll see one day.
You can imagine like he said, and he's mentioned before, and I listened to a couple of interviews that he did recently with some of the crazies. Let me tell you, he called them Fenn tubers. There's a whole Fenn tubing.
Look, don't get us stalked by a group of crazy people, man. I ain't interested in that. I don't hate Mel to Gary, not me.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, not crazy, just
enthusiastic.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that we didn't get a chance to ask him, but the name of his book is Chasing the Thrill, because it wasn't chasing the treasure. It's kind of chasing the thrill, which is really kind of what we do. We chase the thrill. I mean,
absolutely correct. This basically, other than the $1 million, this was geocaching.
Absolutely.
This
100%.
is what we all envision geocaching. You know, like those memes, like here's what I do, here's what my mom thinks I do. This is it. This is exactly what it is. Other than the $1 million, this is what we all envision. You know, National Treasure and all that other stuff. This is what we envision when we're doing geocaching.
Yeah, right. That's
Absolutely.
that's that little meme, like you said, of what people think we're doing, what we think we're doing versus what they're doing. Yeah. All right, let's start ramping up for the giveaway, and then we'll have some final thoughts. So get your hashtag chasing the thrill. Go ahead and get that in there, and we will give away one more of the book or audio. I will contact you and ask you for which you prefer, and I will get that sent to you. I like the audiobooks. That's just me personally. I know some people want to hold a book in their hand.
Absolutely.
He has a hardcover book, which I think is cool. And so
you can't throw an audiobook at burglars if they sneak in the middle of the night. So
no, that doesn't work very well. So
if you're in the book club, just go ahead and get it, because you know we're gonna dig into this one.
Happy Hodag. No, you cannot win again, sir. No, you cannot. And I always think it's funny too when somebody in the network puts it in, like last week when we did giveaways. Like, no, Charles put it. No, you can't win.
Now, hold on, let me sign in under a fake account real quick. So I can
right. Yeah, I love it. So,
all right, let's do it. Let's give away a book.
Let's give away another book. Here we go. Chasing the Thrill. There it goes. It's spinning. For all you audio listeners, we're spinning it.
I like how it pauses and makes you think that person won.
Try Cassius. Oh, and speaking of, we are giving one away for audio listeners too. So,
perfect.
Yeah. So don't feel like you're getting the short.
So how would an audio listener win this book, Gary?
The audio listeners will get that if they tell me one of two Major League Baseball teams, one of the two that Dan mentioned tonight. He's worked for two different, where he's covered two different Major League Baseball teams. So send me one of the two. You can send me both if you want, but it won't matter. I just need one. So if you're an audio listener and you'd like a chance at winning one of the books, tell me which of the two Major League Baseball teams he has covered in his career. Thank you very much. That is that. So
yeah, that's to email in, not to put in the chat room, although too late.
Yeah, too late. Doesn't work that way. Audio listeners. That's okay. Okay. I guess final thoughts. I don't know if Derek wants to pop in, and he's read the book too, but I don't know if he wants to.
Derek wants to stay behind the scenes.
He's stay behind the scene. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys, what are y'all's final thoughts?
I have not. Charles, have you read the book yet?
I have not. I've actually tried to. I mean, when we lived in Wyoming, and then again when we moved to Colorado, we actually had gone through and actually read the poem and tried to decipher it and tried to figure out where it was going to. I mean, there are limited places because he gives like it's above so many thousand feet. So, I had people at work in their spare time who did GIS work.
Yes, you are an audio listener. So there you go. But you got to email me.
They went in and made a map that blanked out all of the land below said elevations and stuff.
Yeah.
And so, we went in and tried to look at it, and we had narrowed it down to it's either going to be in Colorado or Wyoming. Right. I had ruled out Montana, and I had pretty much ruled out New Mexico based on some of the other things. But I'm excited to get the book and read it and whatnot and see what there's so much that goes into this. Now, I've never went so far as to actually going out somewhere and looking. But that was, I don't know a geocacher that you don't mention the Forrest Fenn treasure and they're like, oh yeah, I looked at his poem. Be like, that's just, that's ingrained in what we do for fun,
Right.
Right.
But I'm excited to get the book. It was exciting to listen to him talk about it, and his firsthand experiences with meeting Forrest and meeting the was it Jack,
Yeah.
the guy who found the treasure.
Yeah, Jack.
Jack
And so it's amazing, in the pictures, and just amazing to hear his firsthand accounts of this. This was my favorite piece in the treasure, and this and that, and just I'm excited. It's Laura was talking to me earlier today about how she hadn't seen me actually pick up a book and read in quite a while, and so I may go out and buy this on a hardback cover, and sit down and read it. I really enjoy reading, and so
you'll love this. It is a great read. He goes into, like I say, he mentions geocaching. He talks a little bit about some other treasure hunts. In case you're interested, he does talk about Fisher and the treasure that he found off the coast of Florida. So he goes into a little bit of conversation about that. He goes into discussions about Beep, his friend, and also a lady named Cynthia, and their hunts. We didn't really get into that tonight, but he does go into that. There's some crazy people, not the crazies that are like dangerous crazy, but I mean the people who are like, we can all relate to, in that they overthought, like way overthought it. I mean, they were like, seeing the one time and we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but he went to the one location and he's like, oh, if you look at the side of this cliff, you can start to make out the periodic table, and this would mean this. It's like, and one of the things that we do know about what Jack Stoof said, which was, he says, I read the poem, I calculated, like Charles says, I calculated places that it could not be. I narrowed it down. I listened to his interviews that he had done and looked for clues, because he did give out clues when some of the people that died. There was a change that Forrest did as far as, don't do this, don't do that. So he gave a whole series of things that you weren't supposed to do.
Right.
So he made notes of that. It's, do not climb down cliffs. I didn't do that.
Because you got to remember that he was in his 70s when he hid it. And so he's 71, 72 when he hid this.
Yes.
So you got to remember that it's now, he was probably a very capable bodied man, but he's still 72, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't go ice climbing down a frozen waterfall in Yellowstone.
And
in the
he had to be
wintertime,
by himself,
right?
Also, right? Like, we know for a fact he was by himself when he hit it. He didn't tell anybody else,
by himself. And he went and one of the persons that died because they were basically rappelling off of a cliff. It's like, what are you doing? This is not what you're supposed to be doing.
That's the thrill. You get caught up in the thrill, and that's actually the reason. Like, when you told me about this, we talked about this in the past, and that's actually the reason I didn't get into this one.
Yeah, he was in his 80s. You're right.
Because I get completely obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's extremely true. Yeah. It's a great book. I'm glad we got to have him on the show. It's a little bit out of our norm, but I took a flyer 6 months ago when the article came out, and Dan says he would be willing to come on, and we tried to figure out a date, and he says, well, the book comes out in we thought then was May. I think it did come out in May, and we said, let's pick a date, and I just kind of kept in conversations with him over time, and I thought, again, it's a little different. It's not exact. He's not a geocacher, but I thought people would enjoy hearing about this, and so
absolutely,
especially for a guy who was on the hunt, and he actually got to hold the treasure. I thought, now we all know.
That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
This may not have been geocaching, but it's geocaching.
It is. I thought everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
would
it's
enjoy it.
it's not a far leap to get from one to the other.
Yeah. Oh, thanks,
You
Scott.
know?
Yeah, Scott says it is very geocaching. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Scott saying thank you. Yep. Hit the like button if you liked it. Wait, I have a little look. I got a little graphic for it. Subscribe.
Special subscribe button.
Click the button and click the bell notification to let us know of when we do other shows. So you like that? A little
Fancy.
All right. We are wrapped up. Derek, hit the button for us, my friend.
May your finds be many and your DNFs be few. May the terrain and difficulty both be less than 2. And whatever it is you're looking for, may it find its way to you. And may we all meet again.
Folks, we hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. Please email us your comment at geocachetalk@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The show can be found on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, or Spotify, as well as at the Geocache Talk website. Don't forget to click that subscribe button below and ring that bell notification so that you can see and hear the show on a weekly basis. And tell your friends about the show. Get them involved with us in the chat room. And until next week, don't just talk about geocaching, go geocaching.